live streaming on YouTube, we will see many other participants. So today we are continuing the conversation that we started last month on whether marriage is a do or die affair. That was the discussion we had last month. And it was such a really insightful conversation that we thought that we should have a second edition, a second session of the discussion. At the time that we were having the discussion last month, the news of the death of the famous gospel singer Osinachi was already in the public domain, and that kind of shaped the conversation that we had last month. And this is an issue that keeps recurring: crisis in marriage and in family life. And we just need to open our social media today to get a clear sense of the crisis in which marriage and family life and relationships are in today. So today we are asking a slightly different question from the question we considered last month. So today we are looking at the causative factors. Why are marriages really collapsing? And to discuss this burning question, we have put together a cast of panelists from different backgrounds who have something really important to say about this issue. So I'd like to, first of all, welcome my brother priests who are part of the Soldiers of Christ episode, my 4 other brothers with whom we organize this monthly discussion. I also like to welcome our panelists, Mr. Bishe Barrow, who does many things. He does marriage counseling. He's a human resource professional. He's a politician. He's an educator. He does work in promoting financial and political literacy, and he's also a married person. He's a Catholic. So welcome, Mr. Barrow. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Father.
I also like to welcome Father Joseph Obada, who is a priest of the Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja. Father Joseph is a specialist in bioethics, and he's also a counselor. He does a lot of work and teaching on life issues and sexual ethics, contraception, abortion, euthanasia, pornography, masturbation, etc. It's interesting to have a priest talk about these issues. Father Joseph Obada, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Father.
I also like to welcome Mrs. Jane Akwani. Mrs. Jane does a lot of work. I mean, she's a big name on social media, but in recent times, she's lost her Facebook account. But she's a relationship and communications expert. She does a lot of work in management consultancy. She's a social activist, a writer, an editor, and she is also a married woman. She's a Catholic. Mrs. Jane, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Father. I'm glad to be on this panel.
Thank you. I also like to welcome Mimi Doviashima, who is the youngest person on this panel. She just graduated from medical school in China. She's young, as you can see, but she also has some interesting insights to say into what young people are looking for in relationships. So Mimi Doviashima, you're welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Father Emmanuel.
All right, before we start off with the panelists, I would like to invite, I can't see Father Beckhamson here, so I would like to invite Father James, if he could lead us in an opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of the faithful.
And kindle in them the fire of your love.
Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created.
And they shall renew the face of the earth.
O God, who by the light of the Holy Spirit did instruct the hearts of the faithful, grant that by the same Spirit we may be truly wise and ever rejoice in his consolation through the same Christ our Lord.
Amen.
We pray you, O Holy Spirit, to dwell within us today as we have this discussion. We pray that our words and our thoughts will be controlled by you, O Spirit of the Lord. May we speak that which will touch the hearts of many here. And as we speak, may we reach out more, even to those who need to hear our voices. May it bear fruit in the hearts of many, through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father James. So let me start off with Mr. Bishe Barrow. Now, far too many marriages are breaking down today. As I like to say, We have parents who are married for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and they're still living together, they're still in marriage, but then they have children who are unable to stay in marriage for 6 months. They get married today, 2, 3, 4 months down the line, you hear that they are no longer living together. In fact, in early 2020, Blueprint newspaper shocked us with the news that between the months of October 2019 and February 2020, that about 3,000 cases of divorce had been presented across various courts in the FCT. And that's for those who really think that they want to go the legal way. So, I mean, the number is far much higher if we consider that there are people who just walk out of relationships, who just walk out of their marriages, and because they are tired and they can no longer stay in those kinds of toxic unions and relationships. So as a marriage instructor, as a married man, as somebody who understands what is really happening, I believe you must really have something to say about this situation. So I want to pose the question to you: why are marriages really collapsing today? What is happening? Why is it that marriages are not the way they used to be, like we say in the days of our own parents and grandparents? Of course, they had their own difficulties, but the situation today is totally crazy. What's the matter?
Well, I think that, Father, great question and great place to start from, just thinking about what could be going on. I think it's a variety of things. I would like to just focus on 2 areas very quickly. One, I would say on the spiritual side, and I use the word spiritual loosely. And here's what I think, that there is a decadence of values in society. So think about that. Societies are built around 3 pillars. There is the religious, pillar, there is the faith community, there is education, and there's family. And here's what has happened very recently in our world and in our society is that those 3 institutions are being attacked by materialism, crass materialism. So what you have is people are rather the values in our society are completely eroded, and they are replaced in our faith community, in our educational system, and even in our families. People are only in the pursuit of money. So materialism and the pursuit of materialism and material success is certainly playing a big role. On the other side, of course, is the concept of, I borrowed this from, I think it's Bishop Barron, who talks about the concept of the transcendental third, that, you are together, but there needs to be something bigger than just the 2 of you and the love that you have for each other. So there needs to be the transcendental third, the spiritual, the God factor, the Jesus factor. And again, people are getting married for the wrong reasons. And rather than thinking about that transcendental third, again, we are focused on the material. You think about it as a contract, as an exchange, so fine boy meets fine girl, this guy works in Chevron, the girl works in, FCMB, for lack of better examples. And, you're thinking about, this guy is going to make it. And this lady, if I marry her, she's going to have pretty and handsome children. And we're not thinking about, the real value of the union. The other perspective I'd like to bring up from this is from my own experience as a human resources practitioner, someone who helps organizations and people to be better, is the concept of teamwork. So let's focus on that, if you think about it, marriage between a man and a woman, you are meant to work as a team. And one of the concepts that we use in teaching teamwork is something that comes from a great scholar called Patrick Lencioni. And he talks about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And I think that if you look at marriage, these 5 dysfunctions happen. The first of his dysfunctions is the lack of trust, often because of a lack of vulnerability. Couples are not vulnerable enough with each other. Boys are brought up to be told you can't be vulnerable. The girls expect that you will be vulnerable, because if you are more vulnerable, you will connect. The day you become vulnerable, the same ladies who were brought up in the same system with you are now saying, why are you vulnerable? So there's an absence of vulnerability, which is important in creating human connection and trust. The other issue regarding that is a fear of conflict. People are afraid. People who are in marriage are afraid of conflict. They are afraid of actually engaging with each other and telling themselves the truth, because when they were courting themselves anyway, they were telling each other lies. So all that whole process of courtship was all make-believe, and they continue in that make-believe world even when they are married. Thirdly, Lencioni says it's a lack of commitment, that couples don't sit together to say, where exactly are we going? What goals are we pursuing? What sacrifices do we need to make? Because that is the true value, that's a true record of a level of commitment. The avoidance of accountability, the fourth problem with teams and the fourth problem with marriages, that people don't hold each other accountable. And sometimes because of that fear of conflict, you're not able to give feedback. Okay, sometimes the one party gives feedback in a way, the other person doesn't rub the person the right way. So because of that, you pull back and you stop giving feedback on different issues. But if you don't give feedback to your partner, to your teammates, then how do you expect that person to really give you, the type of relationship you want? And very importantly, at the end, very, very importantly, is the lack of focus on results. What do we want as a family? Remember, you have to set goals, you have to have priorities, and you have to stop thinking about yourself, and you have to think about the result of the team. So I think that these 5 issues, very important. Number 1, the lack of vulnerability. Number 2, a fear of conflict. Number 3, a lack of commitment and the willingness to make sacrifice. Number 4, the avoidance of accountability, holding each other accountable and giving each other feedback. And number 5, just paying attention, working in silos. This is me, this is what I want to achieve. Forgetting that as a team, you must be focused on the team's goals, and that is your goals as a husband and as a wife. So from my experience, I'm thinking there is that spiritual side, our value system that is eroded, the transcendental third that is missing in many of our relationships, and of course, the fact that we are not working as teams, and we are rather working as dysfunctional teams based on those 5 things that are often absent.
Thank you so much, Bishop. You have said quite a lot. I mean, when you made mention of lies and deceit, it resonated with me because I'd shared this story in one of my homilies where there was this young lady, who actually told me that there was this young guy who was coming after her, who was saying that, oh, he's got a revelation from God that she has to be his wife, that if he doesn't get married to her, he will not have peace, he will not be a settled person, and all of that. This whole question about lies and deceit. What happened? 2 weeks after that, the lady saw the wedding invitation of this guy through his younger sister. And she was just wondering if she had said yes to him, to have a relationship with him, how heartbroken she would have been by this revelation of somebody who says, oh, if he doesn't get married to you, he will not be happy. This is God's revelation for him that he has to get married to you. And at the end of 2 weeks down the line, you see that he already is getting married to someone else. And that means that he's already had this relationship going on, because it wasn't just within 2 weeks that he saw this girl and decided to propose to her, and then an invitation card came out. But it shows how people this whole idea of deception, people are they are not sincere. People don't come out to really say who they are. But you have said quite a lot of other things. This question of vulnerability, I'd never thought of it in that way, that people need to be vulnerable in relationship. To accept their human limitations, and then to bring all of that into their relationships. And you have also brought in the question of spiritual values. What are people really looking for? Do they even factor God in all of the discussions about their marriage? So, you have just done a very good clinical analysis of why is it that marriages are breaking down today. Thank you. Let me turn over to Jane Akwani. Now, at our last month's episode, one of our panelists made some very interesting points about husband and wife compatibility. And I think that this is a very big issue as well, because, you read in Genesis, God says, it is not good that a man should be alone. Let us make him a suitable helpmate. And this is God speaking. And for me, there are 2 points of emphasis here. One, it is not good for a man to be alone. So there's need for a companion. There's need for a woman. And God creates a woman. The second point is a suitable helpmate, a suitable companion. So suitability is a very important point in marriage. Are the man and the woman compatible, or are they incompatible? So how can people find their own suitable partners? That's the question. What should people be looking out for with regard to suitability, especially in this age and time, when it seems that there are very many people who are just eager to want to settle down with just anybody else? Maybe they want there are young ladies who are eager to be misses. There are young men who are eager to, like their friends, settle down because their parents are already telling them, when are you going to settle down? When are you going to settle down? When are you going to start giving me grandchildren? So all of these kinds of pressure, social pressure, family pressure, people who want to be Mrs. and they are ready to settle down with anybody. They are not looking at the question of suitability, compatibility. So how should people be really, I mean, why should people pay attention to this question of compatibility? And how does it play out in relationships, courtships that lead to marriage?
All right. Thank you very much, Father, for this question, and thank you for having me on the panel. I'm going to try very hard to speak from a personal perspective, being married for 21 years, and you are very privy to the indices of my marriage and all that. There's this very popular magazine. I don't quite remember where I heard it, but it resonates very well, which says, marry the person you love, then love the person you married. That simply tells us that these are two very different people. I've had cause to counsel a few young couples, and I tell them that during the course of the courtship, no matter how long you've courted, you never quite know the person you're married to. Wherever you're going, you always put your best foot forward. If he's coming to your place, your place is speak and span. You as an individual, you put on your best clothes, your best whatever, just put your best foot forward. Then fast forward to marriage and everybody says, oh, now I've snagged him, I've snagged her. I am now free to be who I really am. And that's where the problems start. First, they should actually, the reality is that intending couples should have long, drawn out conversations. I didn't. So I know how I had to meet conversations or conversations we should have had at several milestones, and it was always dragging me back. So I always tell people, marry someone who thinks like you, who comes from maybe a sort of same kind of pedigree. I'm not saying you can marry up or marry down, but let your thought processes, let your parenting, the parenting you received be the same. Let your value system be very close. My mom's a teacher. My husband's mom is a teacher. In terms of discipline, we've received almost the same kind of discipline, of course, with a little variation being that the parents are quite different. But then I also realized that people do not discuss the very important things in marriage. People enter into marriage with rose-tinted glasses, like I always say, and maybe a bit of adrenaline in their loins. Everything looks so nice and cozy from the outside till you get into the marriage. Marriage is a lot of work. Yes, pleasure, but I tell you, especially once the children start coming, the pleasure takes the backstage and work starts. You have to have discussions about your finance. Listen, finances, someone said to me once that, does money guarantee happiness? I said, no, money doesn't guarantee happiness, but lack of money does guarantee unhappiness. How do you manage your finances? Do you pool your resources together? Is the man a traditional man who insists, I'm going to be the one to pay the bills? Is the wife liberated enough to say, no, I'm going to pitch in, or I'm even going to take the bulk if our finances dip? You must have that conversation, because you cannot, this is not a bridge you cross when you get to it. You better prepare for that bridge. If it comes, you're prepared. If it doesn't come, oh well. Then you also have to talk about parenting. Some people are very casual about parenting. Their children get whatever they want whenever they want it. While some parents are almost borderline Hitlers, if I may use that word. They are so autocratic. Their children don't have their own thoughts. They can't say anything. So you both must agree, because it will become a very big point of friction if you start having children and your parenting style is dragging the children in both directions. It will affect both of you as a couple. Of course, it will affect the children. What about sexual compatibility? People shy away from it. A lot of people shy away from it because, I don't know, there's a stigma. Is stigma the correct word? There's a shroud of secrecy around sex and sexuality. Are you what is your libido? Is it compatible? You find out that during the course of the marriage, the man is holding back because he doesn't want to give the impression that he wants a lot of it. The lady is holding back because, well, everybody would think I'm bad if I want a lot of it, and that's for those that are already having premarital sex, which happens all the time. Well, if you don't discuss it, and then further down the marriage, one person finds out that I cannot keep up, it becomes a very, very sore point. What I'm trying to say in effect is suitability is not the function of a ready-made spouse, a ready-made wife, a ready-made husband. These are people that work assiduously to become suitable for each other. There will be friction. How will you handle the friction? Again, know that conflict is very, very important in marriage. I know a man that said that he has never disagreed with his wife. And I said, show me a couple that has never disagreed. I'll show you a man that is oppressing a woman or a woman that is oppressing a man. You find out that some people, their value system is that the woman must be submissive. Father, I don't like that word. I just don't like it because it doesn't sit very well with me. I want a situation where both of us, where your strength is stronger, you take charge. Where the other person's strength is stronger, the person takes charge. There's a synergy between two of you. But so many instances, still falls back to what I was saying. If these discussions are not had, if people do not say this is how I think, they will seem so compatible initially, and then at the end of the day, it becomes a lot of friction, a lot of fighting, a lot of bickering. And I also tell you that if there's any marriage that the spouse or one of the spouses has not said to the other, I regret marrying you, then that marriage hasn't even started. But then, how do you now know? By the time you find out yourselves, like the first speaker said, if there is not God in your union, you better just walk out. Because at the end of the day, you are both going to try yourself so severely. You will lose your temper. He will lose his temper. You will say things you did not mean. But at the end of the day, if both of you can put your knees down, hold hands, and lift your voice up to God, a threefold cord is not easily broken. But where two of you are relying on your own arm of strength, that suitability will never come. To just cap it all, love the person, marry the person you love. Of course, you're going to have to see those features in him that you actually love. Then love the person you marry. I like to say to people that a man's true worth is not when you're courting, when he's being very careful about you, and a woman's as well. But then eventually try to find out, how does he treat poorer people? What is his relationship with his siblings? How does he treat his mother, his father? All those will give out. And then at the end of the day, I promise you, there's some people that no matter how suitable they are, somewhere down the line, they will break up. And I also refuse to agree that marriages are breaking up more now than they were before. I think people are finding their voices more than they were. My mom is 82. She was married for maybe 45 years or so before my dad passed. And I tell you, they were suitable for each other. They were very suitable. My parents' marriage was very exemplary. But I'm not even sure I wanted to be in my mom's kind of marriage, because she was a submissive type that says that always defers to her husband, even where she had more knowledge than him. So yes, marriages are failing today, but I think people bore a lot of marriages failed actually, but people still stay together despite the failure of their marriage. I know we all know this, but right now people are getting more emboldened. The stigma is dropping. People are facing the stigma face on. So that's why when people find out that they're not suitable, they just cop out the easy way out and they end the marriage. So the last statement is, marry the person you love, but love the person you married, because both of them turn out to be very different people.
Wow, thank you. You started out with the quotation that you ended with: marry the person you love and love the person you marry. And then you said a lot of things in between. Yeah, you said couples intending to marry should have long, drawn-out conversations. If you don't talk about these issues in your relationship, they will certainly rear their ugly heads in the marriage. And that will be the worst place to start to tackle issues that you should have been clear about, that should have cleared out during your courtship, during your relationship. Yeah, so it raises the question of what's the quality of courtship that people have, and what are the issues that engage people during their years of courtship or during their months of courtship. What are they really talking about? Where are they going to? What discussions are they having? What kinds of conversations are going on between them? So I think that that's a very important point that you made. You made a point about parenting, sex and sexuality, and how all of these issues impact on the question of suitability. Yeah. And then conflict, the importance of conflict in marriage. Show me a couple that have never disagreed, and I'll show you a man who is oppressing the woman, or a woman who is oppressing the man. If there's not God in your union, then you just better walk out. And then you've raised a very important point about another cultural factor, the fact that people, I mean, the stigma is dropping. People are being emboldened in 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. People are willing to endure all sorts of nonsense in a relationship because people say, oh, you hear even parents who are telling their children, you're not the only one who is going through this. Many other people are going through this, but they are quiet about it. Now, the first way you bring your own case outside, 9 people go judge. Yeah. And there are people today who, I mean, they don't just give a hoot. Once they just get a sense that they can no longer stay in this relationship, they are walking out. Of course, as a Catholic priest, I'm not going to be encouraging that, but I am simply just saying this is the reality of the situation that we are in today, that people are just willing to walk out of any relationship that doesn't give them the kind of joy and happiness they are looking for. So this calls for going back to the roots. We have to address all of these issues from the roots. Otherwise, simply dealing with them when the marriage has collapsed, I mean, doesn't offer us much in terms of how to salvage the union of marriage. So thank you for raising all of these important issues about suitability and compatibility. Mimi, I'll turn over to you now. So I've met many young people, especially young ladies, who are worried about the quality of young men who are asking them for a relationship leading to marriage. Now, these guys, they say, are insincere, they are deceptive, they are manipulative, they are not trustworthy, and all of those adjectives that they throw out about the kind of young people that they are in a relationship with. I've told the story of a young friend who told me, this guy was asking me out for a relationship, and then I saw his wedding invitation card, and then she tells me that it seems that all of these guys belong to the same WhatsApp group. So it's like they put all of these guys in the same WhatsApp group and they are telling them how to deal with the ladies who are in their lives. And I think that it sounds funny, but it's a very serious matter. So you, as a young person yourself, I imagine that you would have had a relationship or you are in a relationship, I don't know. But what's really the matter with young people and relationships today? From a young person's perspective, what do you think young girls are looking for? What do you think young boys are looking for? Why do you think that there's just this concern about the quality of people out there?
Thank you, Father Emmanuel. Well, the truth is, depending on the angle, the truth is there are a lot of things involved when it comes to relationships in general. And personally, I don't like to talk about relationships without talking about the first point of contact that we have, which is our families. I feel like so many young people are going about with unhealed trauma from seeing the way the close relationships with them, like, we're relating, and they end up holding, depending on who, they end up holding the opposite sex in resentment. So when they go into relationships, they don't fully accept people for who they are. They act based on what they've felt or what they've seen. So it's usually a lot of things. Like you said, so many people are insincere and they are manipulative. But the truth is, I don't feel like my generation is willing to put in the work. Emphasis on willing to put in the work, because I feel like any basic relationship involves at least good communication, trust, and a healthy dose of vulnerability. Again, you have to be accepting of like who this person is for who they are, right? But then we come into relationships with expectations, and because of poor communication, we're not able to express what we want from this person or what we're looking for, like in the long run. We just go with the flow. My generation is very good with vibes. That's the word, yes. They're always vibing. There's really no vision for the relationship. You like somebody, and that's about it if you don't take time. But then I feel like when it comes to dating, that's getting to know somebody, there are certain things to look out for before you eventually decide to commit to that person, that's being in a relationship with them. But then I'm not sure what people do in the dating phase, but for me, it's a thing where I look out for like values, right? So if you think that this person doesn't have similar values with you, like family, let's say religion and all of those things, like if this person doesn't have similar values with you, it's okay to move. Because I always tell people, if you can't catch something in the beginning of your dating or relationship, you may never be able to catch it, because I think that people come as either the best version of themselves or they come as they are. So, I mean, if he's not willing to put in the work from the beginning, or like he's just really like who he is. If you can't catch it in that beginning phase of your dating or relationship, like 5 years to come, it will still be a problem. And I mean, it's always going to be a problem anyway if they are not willing to catch it in the beginning of the relationship. So I feel like during the dating phase it's better to talk about like values, value system, be a little bit vulnerable, have the hard conversations, have a vision. If not, like eventually when you outgrow certain hobbies that you have together, like you still have to be able to make decisions and they will have to evolve around these values and goals. If not, in the end, you realize that you're just wasting your time. I think that our generation just has unspoken expectations. We don't communicate properly, and then we've seen things that we don't want in our relationship, but some of us are not willing to put in the work, and some of us don't exactly know how to even go about it in the first place. Another thing is, I think reciprocating energies. So in the beginning, I feel like this is more on like the guy's side because most of the time the men do the chasing, right? So in the beginning, they are like consistent, maybe always keeping up, trying to reach out, organizing dates and all of those things. And somehow along the line, like it stops. I mean, what makes you think that I didn't agree to be with you because you were consistent and you were making yourself available? But then it's like when they get the babe, they are just really like relaxed and none of those things happen. So definitely like it will be a problem. I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and I mean, as young people, most times these conversations come up, like sharing experiences and all of those things. And the guy tried to equate it to, you know, praying and fasting to God for something. And I kind of frowned at it, but in the end, I feel like I kind of understood what he was saying. He's like, imagine being a Christian and you're praying and fasting to God for something, right? Like when you get what you want, do you use the same energy to thank God for what you got? And I'm like, what if I actually use that same energy to thank God for what I got? And he's like, no, let's be actually realistic. The truth is sometimes when you get things, it's not like, or you get the babe now, as this is the case, it's not like you're not grateful, right? It's just that you're a bit careless or things came up and it's not like you're not grateful. You're just happy and you get carried away. Yeah, basically. So I feel like my generation, we're not exactly willing to put in the work. We are not sure how to go about a lot of things, and we have a lot of unspoken expectations. And I feel like that's a big problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Mimi, though. I would not have known many of these things. I can never know them because I am a priest. I can never know them. No, thank you so much. So, I mean, you've made a very important point. The first point you made, the point of contact, which is the family. So many people have unhealed traumas from their own families, looking at how their parents live or lived. And that has affected the kind of relationship, the pattern of their own relationship. So you see how either your father shouts down on your mother, and then you think that, okay, when you enter into a relationship with a young lady, sometimes they are unconscious reactions, but these are psychological, there are psychological conditions that are already playing up in our minds. And so we think that, okay, well, the good way to be a man in a relationship is to press down on the woman, to not let her have a voice in any conversation, or just, only your opinion matters. So I think that that's a very important point. Many young people in relationships are going on with unhealed traumas from their own families, from the relationships of their own parents, or even maybe from previous relationships that they have had as young people, and they have not been healed from those traumas, and then they transfer it onto a new relationship. So that's a very important point that you made there. And you spoke about values, similar values, visions for a relationship. Many people come into the relationship either as the best version of themselves or just who they are. And that plays a a lot of role in how the relationship eventually pans out. Then you spoke about unspoken expectations. Like you go on social media, Instagram, you see young ladies who post videos or make comments that, oh, me, I'm not ready to marry a poor man. Or if you don't have money, then just get out of the way. I'm not looking for a poor man. I don't want to go into a relationship where I will suffer. I have to. So it's like, okay, I'm looking for that. Is not a bad thing to want to have a relationship with somebody who has a stable financial base. But if that's the only reason why you're going for the relationship, you can get married to a rich man and eventually along the line he loses his wealth. What happens to your love? Is that really love or is it lost for his own money? You spoke about reciprocating energies. Yeah, so most times like the men do the chasing, and then once you get what you are looking for, you go into silence mode, and you're not up and doing in terms of sustaining and maintaining that relationship. I mean, so these are very important points you have made, and I hope that they are making so much sense as well to the audience. Thank you. Obada, I will turn to you now. So Tolly, I'll ask a question related to your expertise, which is bioethics. But for now, let me throw in a pastoral question. So many people seem to underestimate how much impact difficulties in bearing a child can have on couples, on marriages, on families. And you have all kinds of prayer sessions being organized for barren women, but would not see similar sessions being organized for men. So it is often the women. I mean, in the past few weeks now, we have had this video that came out on social media. Carry me, they go. Jesus, carry me, they go. My husband house. And that's it. So it's almost as if it is women who are desperate for relationships. It is women who are desperate to have a child. And sometimes the problem can well be from the man. The reason why we do not have a child is not the woman's fault, it is the man's fault. But often these sessions are really about women and women. But there's also the pressure that comes from society, from family, from parents. Sometimes they're even suggesting to their son, why not take another wife? We don't want to, I mean, we didn't expect that you will get married to a man. That the person you are married to is a man. She cannot give birth to a child. Why not go and have another wife? And then, I mean, even societal pressure. So people are looking at the tummy of this young lady 3 months after marriage, and they're expecting that, I mean, this tummy should be bigger than it was on the day of the wedding. So these are societal expectations, societal pressures. As a priest who is dealing with a lot of young couples, a lot of young people who have similar difficulties and come to you, so for counseling, what do you really say to them as a priest? What do you tell them? And what really is the church saying about these issues? And how do you as a priest approach such matters?
Okay, thank you for the matter. Once for the opportunity, of course, to be on the panel, and to everyone who has tuned in. I appreciate your presence. Yes, thank you for the question, Father. It's such a funny reality. And by the way, I like your voice with that song. I think you should release a track. Anyway, there's an unfortunate reality that is going on, and I think for a very long period of time, there has been this unfair criticism that has tilted along the path of women. We've lived, for the most part, in the patriarchal world, and that has in a manner of speaking, has given some kind of unfair advantage, or I don't even know if advantage is the word that I would use, but yes, you're absolutely right. There has not been a fair portion of criticism given to men with respect to this particular topic, especially with childbearing. You know, it's just like for the longest time, people thought the determining factor for gender was the woman. So you in our climes in the Afro-Nigerian context, you would usually find people say, okay, you don't have a male child yet, you have not given birth yet, so the wife is at fault. But with respect to gender, now it's simple biology 101, that the major determinant for gender is, of course, the man. It's the only one that can bring the extra chromosome. Anyway, that's the jargon for biology. I just wanted to buttress your point that yes, there's been an unfair advantage that has been given to men in this regard. To situate your question in the right context, let me just state a few statistics. Worldwide, the infertility, and by infertility I mean primary infertility, referring to the inability to have a child after 1 year of unprotected sexual intercourse. 9 of 10 countries with the highest total fertility rates are in Africa. 9 of 10 countries with the highest total fertility, not infertility, fertility rates are in Africa, and followed by Afghanistan. And this is coming from a research made by the Central Intelligence Agency in 2017. Southern Europe, Eastern Asia have the lowest fertility rates in the world, with an average of 1.5 children per woman. UNFPA, that's the research institute. Sweden has one of the highest fertility rates in Europe, close to 1.9 children per woman. And 1 in 4 couples in developing countries is affected by infertility. Of course, that's World Health Organization. To make it more particular to your question, 9% of men aged 15 to 44 and 10% of women in the same age group, infertility is nearly as common in men as it is in women. Especially, of course, this was done by Office of Women Health in 2019, just to address that point. But to particularly answer your question, 30% of infertility cases can be attributed solely to the woman, to the female. 30% can be attributed solely to the man, to the male. And 30% can be attributed to a combination of both. 10% of cases have unknown causes. You know, they're still trying to figure out a number of them. So if you are going to walk along the lines of statistics, that is something I would like to put forward. However, the question is, as a priest, when young people come and everything, what do I do? So I'm going to speak from personal experience and say that first, I like to be a pragmatist in this context because, of course, that's the only thing that is we need to make the world become flesh in a manner of putting it. So what I've tried to do so far is to partner with specialists. So I'm in Abuja, Nigeria, and before I started my pet project on, talking about these topics on the social media, I first made my research and tried to create a partnership with a few specialists. So, for instance, with the question of infertility, given all of the statistics I just gave, in my context, in my clients, anyone who has all of those problems that comes to me, I already have one. I need to figure out the kind of tests that has been done up to the point you came to meet me or you came to meet any specialist. What exactly has been going wrong? Then, who has been the person going? Yes, you're absolutely right. Your guess is as good as mine. It's mainly the woman. But of course, what I do is to tell you first, before we even continue with this discussion, go and bring your husband. Some eventually don't come back. Some, I don't get to talk to them because, like you rightly acknowledged, some men don't think they are the problem. And that is a major problem in itself. So, but for the few who eventually, turn up, I've partnered with especially because the immediate solutions, the immediate recommendations, not solutions, please. The immediate recommendations of my clients are usually the likes, the IVFs, the surrogacies, and all of those things. And yes, there are issues with those, which is not for there. I'll not be exhausted in this particular discussion. But I'm just going to go straight and say I have, there is a solution to the problem of infertility, depending on what the problem is. So I'm not trying to have a messianic complex and say there is a solution to all problems. What I'm saying is, first, we need to figure out what the problem is. Secondly, then, because of course, I'm limited with respect to how much of a medical practice I can have. I'm a bioethicist, not a gynecologist. So, but I've partnered with doctors who are particularly, who are specialists in this area. And there's something called naprotechnology, which is something that is working really well. I must give that testimony, especially in Abuja. And the doctor that I have partnered with actually schooled where this naprotechnology started in Omaha, in the United States. Now, what he has done is to localize what was studied in the Afro-Nigerian context. It's, of course, a procedure that, yes, mainly, for the most part, works on the woman, but also on the man, in the sense of getting to study the biomarkers and charting it. It's an advanced form of the Crichton model, what is usually used in the Billings method. It's an advanced method of that. And what it really does, just because we don't have the time, what it really does is to go back and trace what exactly the problem is infertility is not a problem itself. It's a symptom of another problem. The reason couples are infertile is because there's a problem. That is why infertility is the case. So if you don't treat that problem, any other thing you consider is just a bypass, not a solution. With NaProtec, what happens is we go directly to the problem. What exactly is causing this infertility? Without prejudice to the statistics I gave initially of with whom is the problem, and of course the little percentage where we have just not figured it out. Another thing I've tried to do is to organize seminars, and have a social media presence, because of course almost everybody is on the social media, and then advocacy for change in some lifestyles. So I speak to some youth, of course, and I'm like, let's just paint a picture here. You live your life, people get sexually active these days from, let me be generous, from like age 10, 11. I know it's sometimes less than that, but just to be generous. And then imagine you get involved in sexual activities from age 10. And then maybe you get married at age, for the woman, maybe at age 25, 26, maybe 30. Let's just pick a number and say 25. Age 10, 25, that's 15 years of being sexually involved somehow. For the man, let's give it at 15 also, maybe 20. Now, are you honestly saying that taking all of the contraceptives, getting getting involved in some funny sexual perversions and all of those things, you now want to get married and you want your body to work naturally? Don't get me wrong. There is this thing we say in Nigeria that we say life no balance. And the reason I say that is because if you notice in the university context, most of the students that are the Mary Magdalenes and the assistant Marys is eventually, those are the people that when they get married end up having problems with infertility. All the runs girls and the runs boys and all of those things, when they get married, end up having triplets and quadruplets. What it just means is this life no balance. But while I respect and understand that aspect, there's another aspect which is the root cause of all of these problems of infertility. And I'm saying one of them is also lifestyles. So I'm talking about advocacy for change in some lifestyles. And I work with a lot of youth, and in order to begin to work on those kind of lifestyles, of course, let's not forget the fact that all of us have baggages. There are baggages we all have from history. Now, if we are not careful, I've had marriage courses with people who will tell me that I want my wife to respect me. And I'm like, okay, let's be calming down. Define respect. It will turn out to be the case that what they mean as talking about respect is actually submission. And it usually comes more from the part of the man. They say you must respect. And I'm like, no. Let's define these things and make sure that you understand each other. The three prior speakers have emphasized what is needed in the context of marriage and everything. So I won't dwell on that. For saving the last for the best, of course, I've organized prayer sessions, just like your question said. And no, I don't do it for only women. If your husband is not there, I'll have a problem with you because you can't impregnate yourself. So I'll leave it there. These are just some of the things. Of course, that's not exhaustive, but just to be more practical and pragmatic in my local context. That's basically what's been going on and what I recommend.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure I can summarize all that you have said, but you have raised interesting aspects of the discussion, from medical ethics, from spirituality, from moral formation, moral behavior, from a lot of things. And I'm sure that you have a lot of clients at the end of this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you for the interesting perspectives that you have all brought to this conversation thus far. So we have just one more round of questions, but before then, I would like to take some of the questions that you can find in the chat box. So there are a number of questions that people have asked. So we will just send the questions to different panelists. You will answer briefly, and then we will go on to the second and final part of our conversation. So the very first question here says, should a woman who left a marriage that's become unhealthy stop receiving communion even though she's not involved with anybody else? I think that the answer is no, but I'm putting that question to Father Joe Abada. So just take note of that question, and then After reading out all the questions, we will answer them. What are the thoughts of the panelists about the current marriage preparation offered in the Catholic Church, which is like 3 months, I think? Is it long enough, in-depth enough? Does it address the realities of marriage today? I imagine that Father Joseph Obada has something to say about that. I imagine, of course, that Bishop Barrow, who is a marriage counselor, has something to say about that. So our marriage preparation in the Catholic Church, is it solid enough? Does it offer people really what they require to go into marriage? I imagine that Jane too will have something to say about that. Okay. Any recommendation for how long young people should aim to date, to have a courtship in order to really know each other before committing to marriage? So should courtship be for 1 year, 2 years? Should it be love at first sight? You see her today, tomorrow you say, oh yeah, let's go to the altar. So how long should courtship last? Anybody can address that question, right? Jane, maybe you, yeah. So there's another question here. When a husband refuses to forgive the wife after several apologies and family interference, maybe intervention, family intervention, because he noticed she was cheating with her exes, and eventually ends the marriage by asking her to pack her things and leave his house, what do you advise her to do so that the union can be dissolved in the right way? What's the stand of the Catholic Church in conflict resolution in failing or failed marriages? So this is a question of infidelity in marriage, Father Joe, but infidelity in marriage, what should you do? Do you send the woman away? If it is the man that is unfaithful, does he send himself away? Does he leave the house and say, because I'm unfaithful, I go away? So, I mean, these things are sometimes not balanced. When it is the man, nobody tells him to pack and leave the house. When it is the woman, he's the one who says pack and leave the house. But again, we hear that it is in the nature of an African man to cheat. It is in the nature. So, I mean, we consider it almost as a right to the man that he has a right to cheat, but the woman doesn't have a right to do that kind of a thing. So these are some of the questions. There's another question. If someone is trying to love a lady and trying all his best for the relationship to work, and truly the lady seems to have trust issues, what do you think I can do? So what do you do to someone who has trust issues in a relationship? What's the place of temporary separation when there are serious difficulties in a marriage? So it's a question of separation again. Yeah. So these are the questions. So who wants to go first? Who wants to shoot first? Yeah. Bishop, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Try out, So about the marriage preparation, I think the bigger issue, look, marriage and parenting and all those things, I'm not sure there is, how long can you ever prepare, right? So I remember, was it Jane who talked about, I say to people, look, from my experience, whether you fall in love at first sight or they arrange the marriage for you, or even if they use cognomy to arrange you to marry, the divorce rates are pretty much the same. You've got to love the one that you have, and you've got to find a way to make it work. It's never perfect. And, like Catholic Father George Husani says, it's not sugar in the morning, sugar in the afternoon, and sugar in the evening, that, it has challenges. So for me, it's not about how long the marriage preparation is. I think it's about how committed you are to the experience that you have had. What we even find is that people are even trying to short circuit it. People don't even want to come for the 3 months, talk less of talking about how long it is. So even the 3 months, people are telling priests, and you all priests, that, Father, my child is abroad, let's do it sharp, and all of that, all those shenanigans. So I think that 3 months is long enough if you are committed to it and you are prepared to learn and immerse yourself in what you are learning as a team, and to talk about, to have the conversations, and to learn from it and to take some of the, it's one thing to acquire knowledge, but if you're not able to internalize it and practice it and be committed to it, then it's not effective. So I'm not sure it's about how long the course is. I think it's about how rich the experience is. Even now, this is almost how many years that I've been married, and my wife and I, almost 20 years, we still refer to some of the things that we learned from our marriage counseling class because we immersed ourselves in it and we try to really understand it. So I think that's what really matters, is the quality of the experience. But for me, 3 months is enough. It's about that quality. And I think too many people just go in and out. You know, it's just the thing went in and it went out the other ear. You know, we don't internalize it. If we internalize it, it will create a great impact. And if we allow the Holy Spirit to continue to minister to us through it, then, you know, there's no problem. 3 months is more than long enough. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much. I mean, I have something to say about that as well, but let me concede the place to many of the other panelists. Father Joe or Jane, do you have something to say about the question?
Okay, thank you, Paul, and thanks to Mr. Yes, I'm not sure I got a full track of all the questions, but I'll just answer the ones that I think, and I hope that the panelists will also do justice to the rest. The question of communion for women outside of marriage, but are not married to anyone else. So as an ethicist, one of the things I'm careful about is to treat cases on a case-by-case analysis. So I need to know the details of that case and know precisely what's going on there. But as a general answer, it is no. If there is no other kind of marriage contracted, and I use kind of marriage intentionally, which means it does, of course, it can't be sacramental if you have done a sacramental marriage initially, and of course there's no divorce, and that translates to another kind of cultural, another kind of traditional marriage. So the idea of communion is to be in a common union with the church, and if there is no common union with what we believe, there seems to, there of course, to be a problem. So I'm tempted to generally say no to the question. However, I would want to address that on a case-by-case analysis, because that might have some nuances. And that translates also to, I think there was another question relating to that. Let me just go back to be sure I'm reading the right, something on infidelity, if I'm not
yes, infidelity.
mistaken.
So there's this guy, woman who is unfaithful, and then the man sent her out of the house. And so what should the woman do and all of that? Yeah.
Okay, that's again my case-by-case analysis. Well, again, I think it's one of the unfair advantages, like I said, given, it's not even an advantage, it's one of the unfair treatments given to women. I think it's almost always at the receiving end. And again, it goes back to what the other panelists have said as to how and what were the premises of entering into the marriage in the first place. And usually when I do prenuptial investigations these days, when people say, I ask them one particular question, I say, give me 2 or 3 things this man or this woman will do to you that you find difficult to forgive. I usually ask that. And usually, almost all the time, people say infidelity. And I will say, okay, let's define that. What does infidelity mean? What does he cheated on me or she cheated on me? What does that mean? Then they will go further and say, okay, sexual intercourse with another person. And I'm saying, okay, even that one, are you saying if anything happens and it's not sexual intercourse, it's not infidelity? And they will say, oh, okay, what if it's so? Because there's a case I'm handling right now of a man who would refuse to talk to his wife because he found out that she was entertaining romantic text messages from her exes. And now there's a big problem in the house. So does that account, do we define that also as infidelity? Something I prefer to call emotional cheating emotionally. And even the question of still the same topic of infidelity. A man can come to you and say, oh, babe, I promise you I'm not sleeping with any other woman. And it's correct. But guess what? He's sleeping with another man. Or a woman can say, oh, I promise you I'm not sleeping with another woman, but she's sleeping with another woman. Now we're having cases of homosexuality. So the question of infidelity, I'm afraid we need to be properly defined, which is what I'm saying on a case-by-case analysis, because now we need to know precisely what happened. But irrespective, it doesn't justify the idea of sending someone packing and everything. The idea, what was done on the marriage day is for better, for worse, and sometimes the worst includes this, without prejudice, of course, to domestic violence. Without prejudice to domestic violence, in which case there could be an allowance canonically for temporal separation in order to allow for a repair of the marriage. People usually stop at temporal separation. No, temporal separation in order to allow for a repair of the marriage. So I'm afraid I don't know if I'll be able to give a direct answer to that because I don't know the details of the case. But number one, let's define what infidelity is. Number two, let's be sure that it is being fair. You know, it's the idea is, by the way, this is where marriage sponsors, godfathers, godmothers come in. I don't know if most of them know that that is their work. The first point of call when there's a problem should be your marriage sponsors, because they're supposed to be more experienced in that area, in which case you present the case before them and then see if that can help. If that doesn't translate into a whole lot of progress, the priests can come in, and in which case we work things out. Yes, sometimes time is a serious factor in this particular topic, but so infidelity, packing out or not packing out, I don't immediately support it, except of course in the case of domestic physical violence. But I think our attitude should be that of subscribing to the possibility of repairing whatever the issues are, especially because if it's sacramental, then it means you can't get out. Technically speaking, which means there's no divorce and that kind of thing. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I'll stop there just so that the other panelists can answer.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Jane.
Okay, Father, before I go on to the first question you asked me, I'd like to chip in a bit on marriage counseling for couples. I don't think there's hardly a balance in marriage courses. The burden is almost always on the woman to make the marriage work. I just thought I should chip that in so that if there can be a review, let both partners be responsible for the success of their marriage. Nobody should put the burden of success on me, while the other person, maybe because of like our cultural proclivities and all, the man is hardly ever involved. If the woman fails, it's the woman. That was just as an aside. The question you gave to me is, how long should courtship last? I don't think there's really a stated time for courtship. The bottom line is, how committed are both of you to being open to each other? How quick are you to reveal yourself to the other person? You see people that just say this love at first sight. You meet someone and you're so certain you're going to marry the person. I promise you, the first time my husband saw me, he told me he was going to marry me. And I was very angry at him. I said, what? Did they just mold me and keep me? And you come from out of the blues and you say you're going to marry me? But he knew what he wanted. I didn't know what I wanted, but he knew what he wanted. And here we are, 21 years. Of course, it's not been smooth sailing, but we have managed to stick together for 21 years. So the reality is, courtship, the length of time doesn't matter. What matters is that you are open to each other. And yet again, I still keep saying it, marry quick, marry slow, work on the marriage. The length of courtship has hardly got anything to do with the success of the marriage. Who you are in the marriage is what counts, not who you were before the marriage. Thank you, Father.
Thank you so much, Jane. So I was going to say something about, what was it about? It was about marriage costs, where people are complaining. So Bishop raised that young people are complaining, oh, 3 months of marriage costs, that's too much. The church should shorten it. And these are people that for like 6 months on end, they have been preparing their wedding gown from Dubai, or the man is arranging his suit, cake, or photography, or everything. They don't complain that it is 6 months is too long for them to go to Paris to shop for wedding gown and best man suit from London. Nobody complains about that. Gold ring, diamond ring. No. But when you say come and sit down 2 days of the weekend for 3 months for marriage course, no, they tell you, Father, it's too long. Can we not shorten it and all that? I say, well, one, nobody says that if you go to marriage course, your marriage will not have problems. So marriage course is not an insurance policy against problems in your marriage. But it simply says that when you have challenges, you can always know how to address them and what to fall back on based on, as Bishop says, the resources that you were equipped with during your marriage course. I tell you, it takes you 6 years to go through primary school just to get a primary school certificate. Another 6 years to go through secondary school to get a secondary school certificate. 4 years in university to get a certificate. And for something as important as a union for which you want to spend the rest of your life, 3 months of marriage course is too much for you. So people are just being so unrealistic. But they don't, this guy that cannot come for marriage course for 1 hour or 2 hours on Saturday and Sunday, he will sit down on end and watch 2 Premier League matches back on back. He doesn't stand up and say 9 minutes for a football match is too long. But 1 hour for marriage course, oh, it's too long, it's too long, they should shorten it. This lady can watch Kim Kardashian's or watch whatever, for she can sit down before the TV 2 hours and watch a particular program that interests her. But for something that concerns her relationship, her marriage life, what she will live for the rest of her life, 2 hours in the weekend is too much. So you just have young people who are preparing for wedding and not preparing for marriage. They're preparing for the D-Day. After the D-Day, they're not preparing for what is going to take place after the D-Day. So these are, I mean, I'm happy that we are raising all of these aspects of the conversation. So let's just go over to the second round of questions, and then we will conclude. So I want to start with you, Jane. So you have 3 lovely daughters and a son, and I want to talk to you about parental upbringing of children. What should parents take note in raising the boy child and the girl child? Should they perform the same house chores? Should parents discuss sex with their children? And if yes, how? At what age? What sort of example should parents set for their children? I imagine parents who are quarreling and fighting, should they go into their room to quarrel and fight? Or can they do it before their children? Maybe that can be a teaching moment. Like, so there's a wide range of questions to ask here, but my major concern is parents of today, what are they to take notes when raising the boy child and the girl child?
Thank you very much, Father. If I understand, I have 3 questions. Gender roles in chores at home, then sex education for the children, and then quarreling before the children. I'll start with the first one about chores at home. Like you said, I have 3 daughters and a boy, and in the traditional home, you'd expect my 3 daughters to wait on their brother because maybe he's the boy, he's the king, he's the one that's going to carry on the family name and all the things they say just to give the boy child an edge over the girl. Father, you know that doesn't happen in my house. Everybody have hands, you have legs. Chores are life skills. My son cooks. He gets his own turn to cook. He's 16. If he's at home with his younger sister who is 14, he takes the lead. He's the one I'll take, go and make food for both of you. He knows how to cook. He knows how to clean. I made sure from the onset that nobody, at a point, I'll just say a little story. At a point, he was telling his sisters that I'm very special because I'm a boy. I'm the one that's going to carry on your family name. I gave him a thorough brain research. What makes you special? I birthed all of you in the same hospital. You go to the same schools. I pay fees for you. What is special about you because you happen to be a boy? All my kids are special, none more special than the other. So I raise them in that way to have the consciousness. They have their rooster. You're to sweep, you're to wash. Well, they all wash their clothes individually, and you better wash your clothes and keep clean. You're to cook, it's your turn to cook and all that. Because basically, these are life skills. They are not gender roles. I mean, your genitalia does not determine what you do. The only thing I'll admit that the girls hardly do is wash cars. But if the boy is not around, they will wash my car. I'm not going to be at home. I mean, I go out all day trying to make ends meet to fend for them. And then I'll come home, they'll stretch out their legs, I'll be running around in the house. No, I don't do that. So there are no gender delineations in my house. You are a human being, cooking, cleaning, washing, everything, going to the market and all, even though they don't really go to the market because of the security challenges in Nigeria. I do most of the shopping, but everything in the house, nobody cares whether you're male or you're female. Your hands work just as efficiently, except washing the car and maybe some of the heavy lifting, which the girls really can do. Other than that, I don't have any gender delineations when it comes to house chores. Now, sex education, very, very, very germane and very tricky. Growing up in I got pregnant in primary 5. I'll tell you how. My mother would say, if a boy sits next to you, you get pregnant. I'll come home every day and say, Mommy, I'm pregnant. A boy touched me today. She would look at me and laugh. Mommy, a boy touched me today. Am I pregnant? And she just look at me and laugh. And that was really not proper because I didn't know anything. She never really, despite being a teacher, I'm not sure their generation had the confidence to sit down and talk with their children. Excuse me. So for me, according to their ages, the first question a child will ask you is, Mommy, where do babies come from? Unfortunately, or should I say fortunately for me, I had some of my baby books, my pregnancy books and my kids are voracious readers. So somehow they even learned where babies come from before they started asking the questions. But at each age appropriate questions, I talk to them. Now I have daughters. My oldest will be 21 in a couple of weeks. The other will be 20 in September, and the last is 14. That's for the girls. I sit them down and I talk to them in very plain language because they've grown up. I also tell them that one thing I always aspire to be, because the reality is that no matter how well you raise these children, you could be in for some root shocks. You raise them well, you tell them the right things to do, but everybody is different from the next. Some will listen, some will not listen, some will get in trouble. I tell them, I want to be that mother you will run to, not the one you will run from. Because if they run from me, if they get advice from their peers, I'm going to lose my children, whether to death or to the society and all. So it's difficult, but my daughters, I can tell you categorically, there's some questions they ask me, I'll start sweating. I'm like, how am I going to answer these questions? But I have to brace up and answer, because at least I have the experience. If I don't tell them, they will learn from their peers, and you know how much of a disaster that will be. I don't really talk about sex to my son because I think it's his father's role. Even though he comes to tell me about his crushes, I like this girl, I like that girl, and I'll tell him what you don't want a boy to do to your sisters, you better not do to another girl. I mean, that's like one-on-one. We talk about those things, general life issues, but the sex and sexuality act of it all, I leave that to his father, who is a man and who is better equipped to handle that. And then the third question about quarreling. Father, I'll tell you a story, and it's very funny. Growing up, I never saw my parents quarrel. So I thought they were like perfect. I never heard my daddy raise his voice at my mom. I never heard my mom raise her voice at my dad. So I used to think my parents were angels. When I got married, I have a very strong personality. My husband has a very strong personality. Two of us were clashing per minute billing. We're always fighting, always quarreling, always shouting at each other. And I felt like a total failure. So one day I called my mom and said to her, Mom, tell me, what is the secret behind you and daddy never quarreling? And she started laughing. She was like, oh, we quarreled. We did quarrel, but we agreed from day one that we'll never quarrel in front of the children. He said many times we enter the room, we'll be shouting at each other with muted voices. How do you shout with muted voices? I don't know. So somehow I think there's a downside to it. We were not taught, even my elder sister, my brothers, we were not taught the place of conflict and conflict resolution in marriages. So I think they did us a gross disservice by not letting us know that couples quarrel, couples disagree. So eventually she told me that yes, they quarrel and all. And then the upside to it, of course, not really nice. If you're shouting at each other before the children, it really traumatizes them. But there is an upside. The upside is that my children, when we start now, they say these ones, they love themselves so much. Please, they're disturbing us. They'll go away because we always settle in front of them. What are we teaching them? You can disagree, but you must come back and agree. You must come back and make up. So my parents did not do me a great service. Maybe I'm not doing my kids a very great service by quarreling in front of them, but at least to a very large extent, they know that you can quarrel because you will disagree. Not two individuals come together a perfect mate couple. It's the friction that keeps holding two of you till you become one, and then you know yourself. Right now, I know when the quarrel is coming and I can finish my husband's sentences, he can finish mine. He knows what I tell him, I know what he tells me, and we both just practically say those words, and our kids will be in the background sneakering like, see these two old people, they're still fighting. But that bond was created because they see us quarrel, they see us make up. So that's my take on it. Children, boys, girls, they must learn life skills, taking care of themselves, taking care of the home, cooking. Talk to your children about sex. It will happen before marriage, after marriage, whenever it happens. Let them know. Don't tell them as much according, age appropriate instructions. Let them know what sex and all the consequences. Because I tell them, if you engage in sex, the consequences will follow you. I'm not one that's going to go and procure an abortion for you. Or I wouldn't tell my son, you will marry her. Despite how old school that sounds, it really puts the shock into him, and they try to, restrain themselves from all that. And then quarreling. Well, I don't know. I'm talking about what works for me and what doesn't work for others. I know people that say they'll never quarrel before their children. I also know a couple of my friends in my own generation whose parents never quarreled in front of them, and we all agree unanimously that it was a great disservice to us because nobody prepared us for the fact that couples quarrel and couples make up. That's my take on these three questions, Father. I hope I've done a bit of personal justice to it, though.
You have done a lot of justice, more than justice. You have, in fact, done injustice to it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bishi, I imagine that you want to chime in on this question as well. So let's see what a father has to say to this kind of issue. But I have an additional question for you. So you're a corporate strategist and you are a human resource professional. Now I want to talk about the pressure of work and even the fact that parents can have situations where they don't have a job, and that creates a heavy burden for the family. Sometimes it's the man who has lost a job and is unable to provide for his family. Other times it's the woman who has lost her job, and this can put a lot of strain on marriages, especially young couples. There's a question of maternity leave. Now there's also the question of even paternity leave. Yeah. So then couples are living and working in different cities. The guy is in Abuja, the lady is in Lagos, and they have to work to make ends meet. Now, does the work environment of today take note of some of these challenges that marriages and families are going through? So what do you think should be the vision of work in our society today, considering many of these challenges that become a strain on marriages and families?
Well, I take a very interesting view to this subject, which may not be very popular. And it is that people have to decide what their priorities are. Organizations are set up to achieve certain objectives. You must recognize that the founders and the shareholders of corporate organizations have certain goals. And here's what they want. They want to attract square pegs in square holes. They want to attract the right type of people to deliver on those things. And at different times in our lives, we may be the right person. For example, so at that point when you are a young lady, right, before you start to have children, there are certain types of jobs that will be better aligned to that your own lifestyle. People talk about work-life balance. And I say, look, the most important thing is to decide for yourself what are you a square peg in a square hole? Does the reality, to be realistic, so there's some realistic thinking that needs to go into it. At this point in your life, what is your priority? Is your priority to have a high-flying job, or is your priority to take care of your family? And this is not about women. This is also about men, because again, let's go back to the reality, Father, that at the end of the day, we are in a knowledge-driven workplace. There are no differences. For example, they talk about gender pay gap and all of these things. There are no differences between the intellectual abilities of men and women biologically. We are no longer in the agrarian age or in the industrial age where you say someone has to have muscle to be able to carry something, So the same brain matter exists in women and it exists in men. So if a man and a woman come together in a family, they've got to decide their priorities. What type of work do we want to do? Does somebody, is someone going to be an entrepreneur? Is someone going to work a 9 to 5? Are we going to work in government? Are we going to work in private sector? Are we going to work in a particular kind of industry? All of these decisions are a function of your realistic thinking. What do you want? I worry about this whole conversation from your question. Sometimes people say the environment. Look, we are not slaves. And that's where it's controversial for me. We're not slaves to the dictates of our environment. We are baptized, priest, prophet, and king. We are meant to overcome the environment. We're not meant to shrivel every time you say, oh, the office said this, the law says this, the government says that. What do you want as an individual and as a family? And how can you take decisions that are in line with what you want? So I think about work-life balance and I say, look, you need to enjoy your job. That if you love the job you do, if your job represents a vocation, something you do and you enjoy, then you will create the balance. The problem is that there are too many people who are working jobs that they don't like. Too many people are managing. And this concept of managing your job, it affects your family life because it's transferred aggression. You are taking your anger and your resentment about things in your work, you are bringing it home. Why? So for me, first things first, decide what you want. Recognize that at different stages in your life, different things will work for you and make adjustments where necessary. make adjustments, but be confident enough, build. Too many people are this thing of the environment, the environment. People are afraid to lose their jobs. People are afraid to change jobs. People are afraid to resign. And I'm saying to people, why are you so afraid? If you are confident and if you have capacity and you have capability, trust me, you will always find meaningful work that will compensate you adequately for the talent that you have. But I think people are so frightful. People are so, it's the same. Let me show you another way. Father, this is why people take jobs, and let's say in those jobs, they require them to do things that are unethical. And they say, oh, no, waiting man go do. I don't have any other job. There is a lot that man can do. You can work out. So if you think that your work environment or the realities or the expectations of your job are too hard, well, you can learn the skills to cope. And if you can't and you struggle with it, you can walk away. I remember recently in my organization, someone said to me they needed to do a trade-off between a family thing and work. And the person said, that in this organization, I have to sacrifice. I said, no, whoever told you have to sacrifice your family because of work? That's ridiculous. So you've got to strike the balance. So I would say that organizations, of course, need to be more, the people in organizations need to be more humane, and I find that doesn't happen a lot, in spite of the fact that a lot of these people go to church and to mosque and claim to be spiritually, endowed, but their humanity is often missing. But let's remember something. These businesses, these organizations were set up with a goal, and the goal is to achieve certain results, and we must always remember that. Being humane is important. That's a human thing. And that's you as an individual. So individual bosses, individual leaders and managers must try to ensure that the system works for the people. But all of us have to recognize that these organizations have a certain objective. The other side of the question is, what do you want? Which is what I've been referring to. What do you really want as a person? What do you want as a family? What do you want as a couple? And being able to make sacrifices for each other. So at some point, it's okay if daddy has to stay back. So at some point, it's okay if mommy has to stay back. You have to have those conversations about what you really want at different stages in your lives. And then, at the end of the day, I mentioned it when I first spoke about this crass pursuit of materialism. So we have to be careful. And what am I concerned about here? I'm not saying that you don't want to have money, you want to make money and take care of your family, but I'm saying that at what cost? At what price are you willing to pay? And what is your concept of, just like what's his name, Father Obada said, what is your concept of infidelity? In my case, what is your concept of success? What is this pursuit of success that we are all chasing? Is it just to have money? Or are we thinking about success as what? For example, like I said earlier, about success that is transcendental. What is the ultimate purpose of your life? Is it just to have a job and to make money, or is there much more? So people have to have a balanced life, where you look at, there is your family, there's your work, there's your vocation, there's your relationships, there's your spirituality. All of these things are important, and it is your choice to create that balance. That is what I would say. And if everybody looks at it from that perspective, rather than thinking about the environment and the office forcing it on you, nobody's forcing it on you. Nobody's putting a gun on your head. Make choices and make the best choices, considering all the issues. And at different stages in your life, you can move, you can shift. But overall, if you are a square peg in a square hole and you love the job you are doing, and you are prepared to develop yourself and continue to learn and grow, don't be afraid. If you need to take some time off, take the time off. You can always come back to it. And all these things about people living away from each other, again, it's about understanding, it's about conversations. Sometimes it is expedient to do those things. They shouldn't last forever, but it's also about that connection, that conversation, that commitment, and that understanding that the couples have with each other. Yes, it can create a crisis. Yes, it can create problems, but it's you that chooses for it to create a problem. It is not the fact that you live apart from each other that created the problem. You chose that separation from your spouse will create a problem. So don't say that it's the environment that caused it to happen. It was you that caused the problem to happen, not the fact that you lived apart from each other. Yeah?
Hey, they will say body no be wood though, body no be wood though, man.
But body no be wood, body no be wood. Now you say body no be wood now. You are the one who consciously accepted to live in line with that premise that body no be
Philosophy.
wood. Exactly. It's a choice. Nobody put a gun on your head, you know.
Hey, thank you
Body
so
no be
much.
wood.
Thank you. Thank you. This is quite an interesting conversation. Mimi, though, I want to bring you on now. So, yeah, all right. You just graduated from medical school. And I imagine that you have seen a lot during your own internships and practices. So, what are some of the health concerns of young people, and how do these concerns affect their relationships? Mimi, though, are you there?
Yes, thank you for that, Emmanuel. I heard your question.
All right.
So some of the health concerns. Okay, first I'll start with saying that medically, young people range from ages 20 to 44. So I'm just going to highlight on, I feel like the three most common things I saw during my internship. And the first one is declining mental health, which is especially depression and multiple substance abuse, and then diabetes. Yeah. So first off, mental health, the importance of a healthy state of mind and thought process cannot be overemphasized. Once there is a decline in mental health, relationships can be affected. So I'll just focus on depression. So depression is simply when there is lack of interest in normal daily activities, which one previously found pleasure in. And obviously, people that are battling with depression, they'll be unable to function properly in their relationships and various aspects of their lives. So these people that are depressed, they will tend to be withdrawn and they'll feel this sense of worthlessness, and obviously it affects their relationships. Multiple substance abuse, sometimes it's either medical drugs that are being abused or hard substances. And it's really annoying because sometimes when you ask these people like why they indulge, they'll tell you that the effect of the drug like makes them feel happy, and then it makes them feel like maybe they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. They just try to explain how it makes them feel. But the problem is drug abuse generally over time like impairs normal chemical reactions in the brain. So obviously with time, people begin to have like impaired thought processes. And a lot of drug abusers, they just fail to have healthy relationships because obviously their thought process has been impaired. So they become manipulative. Sometimes they end up being so self absorbed. And these people tend to be violent, and it causes a strain in their relationships. I also mentioned that I was going to speak about diabetes. Diabetes occurs in people mostly within the ages of, there's type 1 and type 2. So for type 1, it occurs between the ages of 20 to 30, and then, sorry, type 1, 20 to 30, then type 2, 30 to 44, thereabouts. The problem is that people that have diabetes have to undergo a lot of lifestyle modifications. So these modifications have mostly to do with diet and like exercising, activities, and all of those things. So imagine being in a relationship with somebody that is not very understanding. It can cause a strain in the relationship because people, when you tell them that they have certain ailments, even though these ailments can be managed, they end up feeling like their world is crashing down, and they are in a process of trying to what's it called, accept what is like their new reality. But then if you don't have an understanding partner, the person will not understand that this is the case, and they may end up feeling like you're a toxic person, or you're complaining a lot, or like things are going wrong. Well, I mean, you're just trying to accept your new reality. So it causes a strain in the relationship because this person is not understanding enough to know that you're going through something and you need help and you need supportive loved ones. I also want to throw in polycystic ovarian syndrome. Is mostly is in women actually. So this is an ailment that has to do with hormonal imbalance. So it tends to affect women and their mood. It causes anxiety, depression, hypertension, diabetes. It actually predisposes you to a lot of other like ailments. And most women with this PCOS, they mostly go undiagnosed for so many years. Most women don't even know they have this until it's time for them to conceive and have children, and then they realize that, well, the problem all along was PCOS. So during this period, imagine like because of the hormonal imbalance, you're having like depression, you know. Normally, I feel like women have mood swing and all of that, like hormonal imbalance and all of those things during their time of the month. So imagine someone that has that like at any time in the year and at any time of the month, like is really, really heightened. So that's what it looks like. Being on your period and being moody and being all of those things. Then imagine being with someone that complains that today you're hot, tomorrow you're cold. Like they can't explain what exactly is wrong with you, and they feel like you're always this way or that way. When they feel like you're this way, you switch to being that way. So that causes a strain in relationships as well. And yeah, basically.
Wow, thank you so much. So, I mean, these are really interesting issues in this conversation. These medical health concerns are very important. And if you know anybody who is suffering from any of these conditions, I think that it is always good to recommend them to where they can find help. So, because these are issues that are affecting relationships, sometimes people are unable to even diagnose properly that this is what is happening to them in their relationships. But I think that all of this exposition is just to equip us with new knowledge, new understanding, so that wherever we meet some of these challenges, we know exactly how to go about addressing them. So thank you so much, Mimido, for those interesting insights. So we have just one more question, and that's for Father Albada. After that, there's a priest that I will just give 2 minutes to say something, and then we'll just go around final word, 1 minute, and that's the end of the conversation. So Father Albada, now this question is for you as a bioethicist. Today, there are serious challenges with parents who have autistic children or children with other special needs, but we also have a very touchy issue about genotype mismatch. So sometimes the husband is AS, the wife is SS, and then they're asking, can we get married? And sometimes, I mean, you give them advice and then, well, they decide to get married, and then they have children who have challenges, and then that even causes a strain in the marriage. You have situations where husbands have walked out of marriages because they can no longer cope with taking care of this child that is a sickler, or sometimes it is even the woman who abandons the child and goes away. So there are a number of other very, very crucial issues as far as marriage is concerned in terms of all of these concerns. So, but I want you to really speak about the genotype issue. And so, like, how is this a concern? Like, so if somebody asks you, ASSS, we want to get married, this is our situation, I'm AS is SS. So what do you say to this kind of people? They tell you that they love each other.
All right, thank you, Father, and also to the other panelists. I'm really enjoying this. Okay, so I'm going to begin with a genotype question, just like Father asked. I mean, the questions you asked are along a lot of spectra, in the sense of there are some real life challenges, there are sexual perversions and all of those things. But let's begin with the genotype pain. So it's and I've been very concerned. I even have, Father, you know about this. I have a video particularly on the question of the sickle cell, where I invited the sickle cell warriors to talk about this, because it's so much of a touchy topic, and especially in the context of marriage. So I'll start by saying this. love is not enough. And I know I'm coming out a little bit harsh. Some will say, well, you're a priest, you're not even planning on getting married, so you don't understand. Well, it's a question of emotions. And yes, my priest, we know how to walk around emotions and stuff like that for the most part. But the thing is, love is not enough. Those who are married will know very well that there is always the question of compatibility, there's a question of agreements, there are a whole lot of things that come across that should be discussed with respect to marriage. So yeah, love is not enough. Love is important. Love conquers all things, but love is not enough. Compatibility is necessary. And what I would say to that is this. I've been even up to the point of making a research for this conversation. There was a news sometime late last year and early this year about the breakthrough drug for the sickle cell disease. I've been doing a follow-up. I'm not confident enough to say it's working, just based on my research. I'm not confident enough to say that. So, but I just share a particular optimism that maybe this would help, and in which case, the lovebirds can as well just go ahead and marry if, of course, the medication works. But up to this point, I would say that I think the whole point is getting the concept of marriage, and this is where, especially for us who practice our Christian faith along, Catholic doctrines, it's somewhat of an advantage, because then we need to understand the idea of marriage as an institution that has three goods, in the sense of there are three things that make marriage. So there is the procreation and education of children. There is the love between the spouses, that's the companionship. And then, of course, there is the sacramental bond. Now, when you put all of this in context, if these three things must be put in context, then the idea of genotype, especially as a mismatch, does not immediately fit in. How so? Because it is, I don't pretend to understand what sickle cell warriors are going through, but I have operated with a good number of them. And I can tell you, in fact, I know this may not speak at the danger of a single story. Some of the persons I've met have said at some point when they are going through their crisis that they literally express hatred towards their parents for giving birth to them. It is not a pain. If you understand the biology behind the sickle cell, it's not the kind of pain we should intend. It's one thing that you give birth to someone with maybe a genetic disease that you have no control over. But in this case, there's a prior knowledge. There is an intentional act, and it's a grave matter. In theological terms, that is the definition of mortal sin. So it is a great danger to intentionally enter into something that has more than 90% chance of. I know there's a little percentage of those who have tried it and maybe did not come out with a sickle cell warrior, but we can't afford to take such risks. So what I would recommend, and what the church says, is one, to sympathize with those who are, very much in love and really want to go ahead. But the thing is, love is not enough. Matrimony is not just a question of two people in love. There's compatibility. There's a fact of children, procreation and education of children. So that you can't divorce that factor, that important part, away from the fact that two of you are in love. By the way, when eventually it happens, there are different ways crises happen for sickle cell warriors. What if a very big if? What if there isn't enough financial resources to take care of, as it is most times the case? What if it puts a lot of strain on the mind, because now there's not a question of more attention to that particular child in case the child has siblings. Now you begin to pay attention to just that child, which might even raise jealousy. As funny as that sounds, might raise jealousy even on the part of the other siblings. Why is getting some? Because the thing is, sometimes if you don't know and experience people's pains, you might just think it's nothing. So up to this point, the church has a very strong stand on this question of genotype, just because of the fact of not separating what marriage is as just narrowing it down to two people in love. No, it's a question of two people in love that should give birth to children, procreation and education of children, in which case it's expected that at least that happens within the right confines. And then, of course, the companionship. So, by the way, genotype is a threat. Sorry, the whole genotype mismatch is a threat to man. The three goods of marriage, maybe two, maybe not the third one. It's a threat to proper care of the child. And in any case, other children, in case the child has siblings. And it's a huge threat to the companionship, because I bet you it is going to threaten how much expression of love there is, because there's always going to be the up and down. So at the end of the day, I think with due respect to those who, of course, already have children, sickle cell warriors, and those who are seriously in love and wanting to try this out and everything, I don't pretend to understand what you're going through, but can we at least agree on the basis that marriage is not just a question of two people in love? It's not just about lovebirds. It's an institution that is ordained for a number of things. And so I think in philosophical terms, to talk about teleology, they tell us the purpose of things. So in understanding this, I think we should factor in the purpose. So to that extent, I would say up to now, the church is very much skeptical about allowing the possibility of the sickle cell warrior on the basis of all of these things I've said. There was a different question on, and it's very related to those who are having genetic diseases, especially autism. This is coming at a very good time, because right now I'm working on some kind of a docu-series, a documentary somewhat on an immediate reality I have right now that has to do with autism. Because in my clients, again, I'm in Abuja, Nigeria, it is not something that has been talked about a lot. And there are lots of people having it and parents suffering it. So now I'm doing some research on that and to come out with something where, one, raise an awareness, two, work on the support system. That's something I think I need to throw out there with respect to this whole, issues in marriage. I think for us in the clerical state, and even for everybody as a matter of fact, we need to enter into something called the ministry of healing. For the most part, when people know that there's some sort of a support system, however little, they are better able to manage suffering. Is this still going to be suffering? Yes. But they're better able to manage suffering. What makes these things complicated sometimes is because a lot of people have no hope. And once there's no hope, there's a tendency to always tilt towards the extreme. So as difficult as this autism, cerebral palsy, and all of those kind of genetic issues, it's very, very important that we have, not just for the children who are going through those genetic disorders, but for the parents who also have to manage them. Because then there could be a problem of burnout on the part of the parents who number one don't even understand what's going on. Some, most in this part of the world. And secondly, the children themselves. So autism, for instance, is I have one who comes every day to this church, and what I've tried to do is I know 9 institutions in Abuja that take care of autism. And then I have a personal contact of someone who is specialized in taking care of autistic children. So usually I just call up my contact or just call any of those schools and then refer and then do a follow-up, of course, to ensure. So, I mean, it looks like a drop in the ocean, but it's the much we can do in the meantime. There was something said, I know I'm eating into the time, but there was something said about the sexual perversions. Sexual perversions is a question, I'm talking particularly about pornography and masturbation. Today is Corpus Christi. One of the things I said during my homily today was, you are what you eat, or phrased differently, we are what we consume. And what we consume us. I was referring to that from a spiritual point of view, obviously. What we consume us. But it's valid for even other things. I don't know if anybody has ever gotten exposed to pornography. When we talk about, there's a group, for those who are not aware, there's a group, the Younger Catholic group, and one of the last discussions was on pornography. And we talked about this topic of pornography. And one of the things to talk about is the biology of it. There are many areas, there are many things to say about pornography, but I'd like to emphasize the biology. It's so dangerous that it causes a damage to the brain equal to having a head-on collision in an accident. What I mean is the same damage that is done to the brain with a head-on collision on the prefrontal cortex. For those who are in the medical world, we know what I'm talking about. I don't want to bore you with the biology. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that deals with making decisions. Exposure to pornography, especially over a period of time, engineers the reward system, trains it in such a way that I can't get optimal pleasure until I watch this. The problem with that is it creates a neural pathway that says the way I can get the highest pleasure is through pornography. What that does is nothing else interests you except that particular thing. And the natural child of pornography are things like masturbation, fornication, adultery, and any kind of sexual perversion. It's a logical consequence. So again, the time does not permit to exhaustively talk about pornography. But what I would say is, whatever we consume consumes us. Those who consume pornography, after a period of time, get to know that they can no longer concentrate on any other thing. It's just like, it is the same principle that works with addictions. So for those who are exposed to drugs, it's such that until they take such substances, especially those who have been too much exposed to it, they can't settle down, they can't be calm. They necessarily have to function on that. So I'm happy to journey with a lot of persons right now who are going through this whole pornography thing. And it's what we're trying, because now you need to create a different neural pathway because it was a product of a habit. So you need a different habit to actually get off it. But it damages, what I say is, the same way Jesus is present in the Eucharist is the same way the devil is present in pornography. The devil is incarnate in porn. That's from the spiritual angle. There's the medical angle, there's the economic angle, in the sense of you need to spend money with these things because after a while, you need exclusive content. So you need to subscribe. You subscribe just like Netflix, just like the DSTV, and the more you subscribe, the more content you get. After a while, especially for those in marriages, your wife or your husband may not be able to do the gymnastics that is happening on the screen. And then before you know it, it leads to divorce, it leads to extramarital affairs and blah, blah, blah. So, like I said, there's a whole lot to be said about pornography, and masturbation and all sexual perversions. But I would just say this. There is always a need to understand the telos, the reason for which things are. And this thing called sex, in all its forms, is a God-ordained act that is meant for a particular purpose. I usually try to use the analogy of, in Abuja, Nigeria, we have somewhere called the Pro Cathedral. And then I usually ask, why is it called the Pro Cathedral? It's not a Pro Cathedral because it's not the main cathedral. It participates in the, in quotes, cathedralness of the real cathedral, which means there's a real cathedral, the main one, but this one is the Pro Cathedral. Why am I saying that? Use the same analogy for procreation. Procreation is something that participates in the real creation. Why is this important? Sex is that act that God has given faculty to the man to participate in what only him can do, which is creation. So it's not meant for just pleasure. It's meant for something higher. So it's a thing of, if we have a proper understanding of some of these things, I'm not saying it's because we're taking biology and psychology and everything, but at least if you understand the telos, the reason, the purpose, the end for some of these things, it can help us manage at least the way we go about it. The same thing goes for contraception, more or less. Contraception is, I'll just say this, the church is not against the use of contraceptives. The church is against the act of contraception. I know this may sound confusing. The church is not against the use of contraceptives. The church is against the act of contraception. There are two different things. There are some medications, those in the medical line, there are some medications that are originally designed to be contraceptives. That's to conceive. That's what it was meant for. However, there are other gynecological issues that can come up, in which case there is no pregnancy, but you can take those drugs to treat that problem. In that case, these medications, albeit originally intended for contraception, if there's no conception, there's no pregnancy, but you take that drug in order to treat a particular gynecological issue, it is for a therapeutic use, not for a contraceptive use. So the church is not always, let me add always, the church is not always against the use of contraceptives, but always against the act of contraception, which means you intentionally plan to conceive. Of course, using all of the many things that we have. Again, I'm not getting exhaustive with this discussion, but I needed to put that out. I know there's the whole question of, like Father said, God, the way. But I think to that, I must say that we need to belong to the school of virtue. Virtue means a constant disposition to doing good. It really helps. I know that by the virtue of our state, vows of celibacy, and have to train ourselves in a whole lot of things. Belonging to the school of virtue helps. It takes time, it takes expertise, it takes skills, but it's something that it's a thing of a constant disposition to doing good is virtue. So when we continuously practice it with the right understanding, and of course the grace of God, it helps and it works. And the last one is abortion.
Father Joseph.
This one is a very hydra-headed topic. I don't want to eat too much into time. I've already done that. But I'll just say life is sacred. And I know that some people will say, what of rape, what of ectopic pregnancies, and all of those. Again, I like, as an ethicist, I treat this on a case-by-case analysis. So when those kind of things happen, by the way, rape is as difficult and harsh as it will sound. A child being born from rape is actually a proof that something good can come out from evil. I know that this means psychologically, it's a psychological trauma to the woman. It's a whole lot of things. I'm not denying that. But again, the question of ministry of healing, support groups. I had a retreat for those who had had abortions and are finding it difficult to heal some time ago. And the kind of things they were saying, most of them said, if only they were, because one of them, their parents told them, if you come with a pregnancy, this is I'll kill you. So the idea of already conceiving is a big issue. What I'm suggesting, which is what I do, is try to have a support group, a support system. It's very slow where I am, but it's growing, such that people can express themselves. There is actually a system I'm in touch with who will help to manage the whole period of the pregnancy. If you don't want the child, give birth to the child and bring the child. So I know it's complicated, it's a whole lot, but again, it goes back to one general principle, life is sacred. But then even in cases of ectopic pregnancies and rape, it's never right to intentionally kill someone. But in medical terms, medical ethics and the rest, it's a question of, now, did you intentionally kill the baby to save the mother, or did you intentionally kill the mother to save the baby? That is what's going to determine whether it's right or whether it's wrong. The principle of double effect. But I'll leave it at this
Joseph,
point.
thank you. We'll probably have to stop you here because we want to stop at the hour. It will already be 2 hours in 3 more minutes. I mean, this conversation is long and unending and winding. The one session is never enough to fully exhaust it. I will come back to each of you for 10 seconds. What will be your final word for marriages and family today? I will give you 10 seconds each to conclude that. But there's a priest here who would like to say a few words. So I'll just give him 1.5 minutes, and that's Father Walter. So please, yeah, can you?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Father. Good evening, fathers. And actually, I'm just overwhelmed. This is my first time for being here, and I got a link to Father Obada. I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. And sometimes you kind of feel lonely trying to make this sort of effort around where you are, and to just kind of participate and just see other people having this sort of conversation elsewhere. It kind of resonates with me to feel the hope that there's a new sound coming in, and there's a revival. There's a revival that does not only stop at the pulpit, but to see us stepping into this new space, especially of the social media and the new generation media, and trying to make this impact. And I will spend all my time to just get this kind of education and all of that. And the panelists are so wonderful. I must appreciate each and every one. And I'm almost start shocked, you know. Obada has been a friend from school back then in Jos, back then in the seminary. And so I saw this in the status, and I was asking, where's the link? I was just like, check. Myself, every Friday by 8 to 9 p.m., I do have a Facebook Live session where I have this sort of conversation on different topics, and got to find that we've been running for some very months. But seeing you, Father Martin, Father James, and Obada, and all, I'm almost starstruck just to say, and I just want to say that thank you for what you're doing, and this means a lot. You would never, God may never allow us to see the impact of what we're doing, so that we don't fall into spiritual pride. But this means a lot, and this is going a long way. And just seeing that compatriots are just out there doing this kind of stuff, I just want to say God bless you for what you're doing. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
I didn't know there was the end of the topic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Father.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. So Bishop, 10 seconds. Jane, 10 seconds. Father Joe, 10 seconds. Maybe do 10 seconds, and then we'll have the closing prayer. So what do you say? What are your final words?
Well, I would just say that, human beings, we have a lot of capacity to make the right choices, so when we make a choice, we should not be, think about it fatalistically. We can always be better. We can make a choice about our spouse, about family and all these issues, and we can always continue to learn, to improve, so long as we are committed to the ultimate prize. So let's focus on that ultimate prize, which is our eternity as Christians. And when we focus on that, we can always learn, we can always improve, and we can always be better in marriage.
That's 20 seconds. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jane.
I'd like to say that people should place less emphasis on weddings and more emphasis on marriages. Marriages, their work made easier. It's work, but it's made easier by two willing and committed people. If your car develops a fault, I don't think you throw it out. You fix it. You keep fixing it. So that's it. Please just work on your marriages if you have challenges, and then also know that the wedding is one thing, but the marriage is for the long haul.
Wow, thank you so much, Father Joe.
Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. That's what I have to say.
That's a spiritual man. Thank you. Mimi, though, are you still there?
Yes. Well, I'd just like to say that I hope that with all the information that my generation has been exposed to, I hope we'll be able to do better for ourselves and in the long run, make better relationships.
Thank you so much. Thank you, dear panelists. You have done an amazing work tonight to deal with this topic of why marriages are collapsing from different ramifications: social ramifications, economic, financial, moral, spiritual, biological, medical, behavioral, cultural, whatever perspective. You have spoken from different perspectives. I really want to say thank you to each one of you for coming on this panel. And I know that this is the work that you do, and in the corporate world, you would normally take a lot of money for this, but you are giving us this knowledge free of charge without taking any money. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. The day we have money, we will pay you. But for now, we ask God to bless you and to continue to enrich you with his wisdom, and to bless your work, and to bless your families, and to bless your ministries, your vocations, whatever you do. Thank you so much. And of course, I must thank all our participants who have joined us. Thank you for staying with us for the past 2 hours. Thank you so much. And we will be back next month with a different topic. But of course, I will not forget to thank my brother priests who are part of this this whole initiative. Father James is here with us. The others are not here today. Sunday, they're a bit busy. But I want to thank Father James, who has been working on in the background to ensure that everything runs smoothly. The world, Father James, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I will now offer the closing prayer and then give the blessing. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, our Heavenly Father, you are the author of the institution of marriage. You are the author of family life. From you, every family in heaven and on earth takes its name. We thank you for this very great session that you have granted to us to have this tonight. We thank you for the panelists, for the wonderful insights, knowledge that they have shared with us. Thank you for our participants who constantly join us every month for these conversations. We ask you to bless us with sound sleep tonight. May we wake up tomorrow, rising in joy to sing your praise. Bless our families. Bless those who are having difficulties in their relationships, in their marriages. Give them wisdom, give them understanding, give them compassion, give them patience, give them the gift of accommodation, and help them to resolve their differences to the glory of your name, for the good of their own families, for the salvation of souls, for the betterment of our society, and for the betterment of the world. We ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
May Almighty God bless you all, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Son and
Amen.